High Anxiety is a really good episode of Full House, and one that I remembered really well from the first time I watched this, which doesn't surprise me because it's really great. This is the 7th episode of the 7th season. That was surprising because I didn't realise I was quite so far into season 7 at this point. It's directed by John Tracy, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And there are two main parts to the narrative, so I'll talk about each of them in turn. Interestingly, the intro for this one actually leads us into the main narrative. Usually the intro is separate from the main story. Not always, but usually. But I'll talk about that in a moment. I will talk about Jesse first of all, though, and we get some continuation with the Smash Club from the previous episode. He inherited the Smash Club, and he did get the loan eventually, so he's now at the stage of trying to decorate it, get the plumbing up to code. He has to make a lot of decisions. He's very overwhelmed, and he does ask other people for some help, but ultimately he has to make the decisions, and he's not sure what colour to paint it. Of course, we've got the excitement of wondering what it's going to look like, and I'll, of course, talk more about that in due course. And then he has to make a decision. The reveal of this was great, because a delivery has arrived, and I think it's fair to say that people watching it, myself included, would assume maybe it's paint samples or tiles for the floor, samples of tiles. In the living room is a whole bunch of toilets. I didn't count, but I'd say maybe 15 or 20 toilet seats. I don't know. But they were all brightly coloured. He has to make a decision. And he can't. It's difficult. And Becky helps him. And he asks him, it's so sweet. She asks him what the easiest decision was that he ever had to make. And it was asking her to marry him. So she said to him, which toilet gives you that same incredibly good feeling? And he's able to pick one, and it's really nice, and it's a fun part of the narrative, and helps to move us forward a little bit with the Smash Club. And of course I'll talk more about that as and when. The main narrative focuses on Michelle, and in the intro, DJ and Stephanie have been shopping, and they bought a cat toy, which DJ is playing with. It's quite a bizarre moment, and Michelle says she wishes she could go shopping. It's not quite the same when she goes shopping with Danny, and it just so happens at that moment Danny brings her in a new hat, a frilly little hat, which I say looks adorable, but Michelle doesn't think so, and she's obviously unhappy about this. And then DJ and Stephanie get money for their lunches. Danny has packed her a lunch, and she leaves her lunch in the yard. It's at home, and she puts the bonnet on Comet, which is absolutely adorable. And when the kids ask her at school why she's not allowed to buy her lunch, she says because my dad makes my jelly smile. It's because he puts a smiley face on them before he smushes the bread together. But just the sentence alone was rather bizarre. And they're playing with a frisbee, and the frisbee goes on top of this metal bike. I think it's a bike shed kind of thing. And Denise climbs up and gets it, and Danny happens to arrive at that moment with Michelle's lunch, and he helps Denise down. Everything's safe, everything's fine. Michelle has the bonnet back, which she's not exactly happy about, and that evening when she gets home from school, she's in a really bad mood with Danny, and he ultimately finds out why. It's because she's fed up being treated like a little girl, and he realises, credit to Danny, he realises that he is maybe babying her, which I think is quite common. I feel like we do hear from parents that when they have their last child, they want to cling on to that child's youthfulness as much as possible because it's the last baby. And it's very clear that this is what Danny is doing. But he listens, credit to Danny. He says Michelle can be treated like a big girl. And the next day at school, I assume it's the next day, they're playing again. And Michelle, as a big girl, makes her own decision and climbs up on the bike shed thing again. And she gets stuck. She's scared. It's a long way down. And it just so happens that Danny arrives at that exact same time again. Bit of a coincidence, but nevertheless. And he helps her down. And he said something that I thought was really important. But before he said that, Michelle gets down and Derek says, well, that was exhilarating. I love Derek so much. I think he's such a great character. And I love Denise as well. They really chose well for the friends for Michelle. And Aaron is brilliant as well. They're just all adorable. And Danny explains to her that part of being a big girl is making the right decisions and knowing whether or not what you're going to do is the right thing. And Michelle didn't realise that that's part of what being a big girl meant. And she had to learn. And it's all about making your own decisions and deciding to do the right thing. And just as Danny is about to leave, she gives him a kiss. She's no longer embarrassed. And she said that she chose to do that. And I love that. It's not embarrassing when the power is in her hands and she gets to show affection to Danny rather than Danny forcing affection on her. And I think that that's really important as well. I'm not a parent, so I can't really speak from the perspective of a parent, but I feel like instead of forcing a child or anybody to do something, and instead letting them decide to do it themselves and to decide that that's what they want to do, I feel like it's going to be happier for everybody. Of course, Michelle could have decided to not give Danny a kiss and he wouldn't have been very happy, but I think he would have understood. But ultimately, Michelle decided that, and I think that was great. So it's an adorable episode. I'd say maybe one of my favourites, certainly one of my favourites from season 7. High Anxiety is an absolute joy. Personal highlights, just the reveal of the toilets. DJ's commentary on that as well, I thought was brilliant. She had some fun things to say. And just how they handled the story with Michelle. Whether you're the Michelle or the Danny, I think there are some strong takeaways here. And I'd say maybe don't be like Denise. Denise climbed up and then down, fearless. And I feel like having a bit of fear is maybe a good thing. Credit to her for being able to do that. But I'd say maybe having fear can stop you from getting into dangerous situations. A middle ground between Denise and Michelle would be quite good. Derek is fabulous, and I feel like he had the right attitude. He just wasn't going near it at all. I'm more of the Derek in this situation. I don't know if when I was a child, though. I think I did a lot of climbing as a child. Certainly not now as an adult. Either way, I think there are some great messages in High Anxiety, and we also get some forward movement with the Smash Club as well. So, needless to say, it's a pretty great episode of Full House, and one that I'm sure I'll always really thoroughly enjoy.